Thank you.
All right. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Christina London, and I am the Health and Wellness Outreach Program Lead here at RX Outreach. The mission of RX Outreach is to provide affordable medications to those in need. So if you or someone you know is struggling to pay for your prescriptions, having to choose between your groceries, utilities, or getting the medication you need, please reach out to myself, to our speaker, to anyone at RX Outreach. And of course, you can always go to our website, rxoutreach.org, and enroll for free or learn more about the medications that we have in our formulary. Today, we're going to be learning about erasing the stigma of mental health. And this is the first weekly session in a series of community health education webinars led by medical professionals and experts. This would actually not be possible without our sponsors. They allow us to provide this resource for free. So the next slide, we're going to show you some of their logos. And I just want to give a thanks to Anthem, Stigma, the Bridgeton Landfill Community Project Fund, the Lutheran Foundation of St. Louis, and the Marillac Mission Fund. Thanks to them, we're able to do this. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Roy Jefferson, my colleague. He will be leading this presentation today. Roy is the Healthy Reentry Coordinator here at RX Outreach. He is also a philanthropist, a human services professional experienced in youth, family services, and juvenile justice, and a community advocate who is passionate about uplifting marginalized groups and communities, with more than a decade of experience working with families who have complex mental health needs. So without further ado, Mr. Roy, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. And just as she shared, the Healthy Reentry Coordinator, and in that capacity, help individuals bridge their medications leaving Department of Corrections. And so just a little bit about the Healthy Reentry role. And so today we're talking about erasing the stigma. And so we're gonna go through our agenda for today. So today we're gonna discuss stigma in the media. What's the difference between mental health and mental illness? Prevalence and public perception of mental health, barriers to mental health treatment, common stigma surrounding mental health. And also want to take a moment just to imagine if there were no stigma to mental health. And then also try to come up with some practical steps and practical ways how we can help erase stigma. And so stigma in the media. So the first media outlet that we're going to visit is television. And so this is a television show that aired on A&E. It's called Bates Motel. And so, of course, so this is the television. So Bates Motel is based off a fictional story of a man named Norman Bates, based off a 1959 novel called Psycho. After Norman's father died, Norman and his mother lived alone together until Norman reached adolescence. Norma found new love, Alex Romero, and planned to marry. Norman, driven over the edge of jealousy, attempts to kill himself and his mother after turning on a faulty furnace, filling the home with gas. Alex Romero discovered Norman lying beside Norma, his mother, in her gas-filled bedroom. Norma died, but Norman later recovered. Norman developed dissociative identity disorder, assuming his mother's personality to repress his awareness of her death and to escape the guilt of murdering her. He inherited his mother's house, where he kept her corpse in a basement cellar. As mother, he commits murder against anyone that he believes Norma will want to kill if she was still alive. After each mother trance, he does not appear to remember committing the murders himself, believing mother to be wholly responsible. And so that's television. And so this is one example of how stigma is portrayed in the media and television. So next we look at newspapers. And so this is a newspaper clipping regarding Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was an American serial killer and sex offender who committed the murder and dismemberment of 17 men and boys from 1978 to 1991. Many of his later murders involved necrophilia, cannibalism, and the permanent preservation of body parts. Although he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, and a psychotic disorder, Dahmer was found to be legally sane at his trial. He was convicted of his murders and was sentenced to 16 terms of life imprisonment on February 15th, 1992. And then November 20th, of 1994, Jeffrey Dahmer had lost his life while being in prison. And so it's an example of stigma in the newspaper. So our next media outlet we're going to look at is movies. And so movies is one of the oldest media platforms. Everyone knows for the most part the Halloween movie franchise is based off of a fictional character named Michael Myers, who was born October 19th, 1957. When Michael was 6 years old, he claimed to have suffered from bizarre, inexplicable nightmares and heard a voice in his head that would tell him to do things. Michael shared that these voices would tell him to hate people. His dreams were filled with murderous imagery that greatly affected him later on in life. After Michael had murdered his older sister, he was later sent to a sanitarium where he spent 15 years. And so it's to believe that Michael Myers' diagnosis was an antisocial personality disorder, but not limited to antisocial personality disorder. They believe there are some other specified schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. Even thinking about watching like some horror movies, when directors in the movies want to cue that a character may have a mental illness or a mental health need, that character is usually very socially distant, barely moving, never speaking a word. They usually portray them as being very quiet or mute, socially withdrawn, or else showing a complete lack of interest in others. It's socializing with others, being in close proximity to others. They're just very socially distant. So our next source will be online. And so the internet is one of the newest sources of media. Internet also gives you a chance to express your ideas all over the globe. This is a blog about a mother advocating for her son who is diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia. Dyslexia is a learning disorder that involves difficulty reading due to problems identifying speech sounds. They're learning how they relate to letters and words. So it's just a decoding issue. And then also dysgraphia is a learning disability that affects writing abilities resulting in spelling, poor handwriting, and trouble putting thoughts on paper. And so on the screen that you see is a picture of the mother and picture of her son. Mom shares, my dyslexic son is classified as special education. His only disability, that she put in quotations, is dyslexia and dysgraphia. He doesn't have any other condition. He can run, he can play, socially interact with others, etc. I refuse to think of my son as disabled because he's not. So why is her son receiving special education? Because schools in the traditional setting were not designed to respond to how his brain functions. She shared that the Individuals with Disabilities Act IDEA recognized her son's dyslexia diagnosis and special accommodations could be provided through special education so that he can learn in a manner that suits him best. And so as you visit her blog and you look through it, and she shared that, my son is not a short bus kid. And so even in her efforts to share that her child was not special needs, so she understands the stigma regarding around a school bus, it's a shorter school bus. She understands the stigma revolving around having an IEP. IEP is an individual education plan for individuals that are receiving special education services. Each child has a tailor-made IEP plan where that child receives special services to meet them where they are mentally, cognitively, etc. And so that's how Stigma is portrayed in the media. I'm sorry, not just media, but online. Next, we're going to look at video games. And so video games are a form of electronic media device, electronic media source. This media source is grown normally in youth. This video game, this video game is based upon the PlayStation 4 platform, and the video game that's featured here today is called The Inpatient. The Inpatient is a virtually reality first-person horror video game that genuinely puts you, the player, at the center of the story. The first thing it does is strip you of all of your memories. You're in a sanatorium and you can't remember who you are. Your role is to explore and discover where you are and make choices that will drastically affect your story and your ending. And so just even looking at the cover of the video game, so it shares the Inpatient, has a sanatorium in front on the little sign that's sitting in front of the facility. Facility is in black and white. Looks very gloomy. There's a syringe on the front of the. There's a picture of a syringe that's on the cover of the video game. Also looking at the other pictures, there's a hallway, so some sort of a corridor. It looks like a prison to me. It's very dimly lit, little windows. There's really no natural light. And then also you see another picture on the bottom of a nurse walking down the hallway, 2 wheelchairs. So it's just the pictures, they present a certain picture or depiction of what these places are and what these places look like. And so I'm gonna pose a question. I was thinking when I was prepping for this was that, so why even look at these media sources, these media outlets? What was the purpose of looking at the Halloween franchise? The blog with the mother talking about her child that has dyslexia and dysgraphia. Why look at the video game? Why look at the television? And so I just want to put that question out there for you to hold it, and we're going to visit it a little later in the presentation. And so next we're going to talk about what is mental health. Mental health, what is mental health? Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we respond to stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. Life is full of diverse experiences. Together, all of these experiences impact our thinking, mood, and behavior. Many factors contribute to mental health concerns, including biological factors such as genes or brain chemistry, life experiences such as trauma or abuse, family history of mental health problems. Mental health conditions are common, but help is available. People with mental health conditions can get better and many recover completely. And then, so what is mental illness? And mental illness is a condition that affects a person's thinking, feeling, behavior, or mood. These conditions deeply impact day-to-day living and may also affect the ability to relate to others. If you have or think you might have a mental illness, the first thing you must know is that you're not alone. Mental health conditions are far more common than you think, mainly because people don't like to or are scared to talk about them. And so that's why a lot of people feel alone, because society is not really open to talk about mental health concerns. And so next, we talk about the prevalence of mental health issues. 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year. 1 in 25 U.S. adults experience serious mental illness each year. 1 in 6 U.S. Youth age 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. And about 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14 and 75% by age 24. Public perceptions of mental wellness. In 2015, CNN reported that 90% of Americans value mental health and physical health equally. People see connection between mental health and overall well-being. Our ability to work, our ability to function at work, at home, and how we view the world around us, as shared by Dr. Christine with the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. And so it's really good. So as we'll progress through our presentation, we understand that, just the public perception of mental health, it's improving, so with 90% of Americans are sharing that, hey, we value mental health, and physical health equally, but as we continue to move on, we'll see that uh, many value it, but when it comes down to opening up and talking about our experiences and what we may be experiencing, becomes a little difficult. So barriers to mental health treatment in the past, so we're looking between 1900 to 2000, mental health treatment has undergone extensive change over the years, with some strategies being ineffective or even dangerous. So some of the barriers to mental health treatment has been limited knowledge, limited to no effective treatment. Some past treatment um, practices of the past have been bloodletting to a point where individual is cut and they're allowed to bleed. The idea is thinking that if we release the body of the bad blood, the body will repair itself. Uh, Inducing purging, so having individuals vomit. Trephination, is removing parts of someone's skull. Isolation in asylums, induce insulin comas, and also induce seizures. So some barriers to mental health treatment today, so looking at 2001 to the present. As we learn more about the causes and pathology of various mental disorders, the mental health community has developed effective, safe treatments in place of the dangerous, outdated practices. Today, those experiencing mental health disorders can benefit from therapy along with biomedical treatment and meeting with therapists. However, there are still barriers today. So some of the barriers that we see today are a lack of awareness of mental health disorders. There's a lack of access to care, and then also there's stigma. So common stigma surrounding mental health. At its core, stigma is the sense, whether conscious or unconscious, that someone is different than you, and that difference is negative. Stigma separates us versus them. Common public stigma surrounding mental health include people with mental health disorders are weak or lazy. This may occur when someone thinks, I've struggled with similar issues, turned out fine. So people with mental health disorders need to take more responsibility. Or some may say, hey, I had the same issues, but I've never used a mental health disorder as an excuse to miss school, to miss practice, chores, or my job. Another stigma would be people with mental health disorders are prone to violence. An example of this is when statements are made about tragedies or acts of violence, such as school shootings, such as only a crazy or mentally ill person would do something like this. This often categorizes hatred as a mental health disorder, which is not. Another stigma would be people with mental health disorders are incompetent. This stigma might show through thoughts like, I'm not sure we should hire someone who is open about their history of depression, or my child suffers from social anxiety and needs me to always be there for him or her. It's important to understand that these perceptions about mental health disorders and people diagnosed with disorders are wrong. Research and experience dispel each of these stigmas time and time again. Says Dr. Westers, for example, we know treatment can be very effective so that mental health disorders isn't always something a person struggles with the rest of their life. And we know that individuals diagnosed with mental health disorders are no more likely to commit acts of violence than those without a mental health disorder. And so more common stigma surrounding mental health. And so there's public stigma. Public stigma experienced externally from a system, group, or individual. Public stigma surrounding mental health can lead to self-stigma and decreased help seeking. Self-stigma is the internalized public beliefs. So that public stigma that's out in the community or in a system or a group of people or that individual is portraying onto someone else, the individual then starts to internalize those beliefs that affect the individual self-esteem and affects their outlook. And so some of those stigmas would be, I need to see a therapist, but if my family, if my roommate find out, they may think different. They may think different of me. I'll get through this on my own. I've always felt anxious and depressed, and I always feel like this. I must be going crazy. No one else is going through this. And so at the beginning, I posed a question: is why are we looking at television and movies? Why would I start that way? And I think the important thing is thinking about the Halloween franchise. So me personally, I like the movie, and so it's just the history, the background, all of that is really interesting. And I'm also looking at the Bates Motel. And so looking at the character, even though these are fictional accounts, I think that media does a great way of helping us to talk about those things that is difficult to talk about in society on a regular basis. And so I think media is so, even though media sometimes can grossly exaggerate mental health and those different topics, but media kind of puts those topics in our lap that we should be discussing with one another, and it opens the door for us to have those conversations about mental health. And so, as Christina has shared in the beginning, pretty much my professional career started in juvenile justice. So I was a juvenile officer for the past 6 years, for 6 years, and then 3 to 4 years, I was doing a lot of volunteering with youth who are in group homes in Southeast Missouri. And so I'm gonna give a couple examples of some mental health. So for about a good 2 to 3 years, I've had a increased level of youth with mental health needs. And so I had a 13-year-old boy, and mom had shared that he was struggling with a bipolar disorder with some schizotypal traits. And so he wasn't fully schizophrenic, but he had some schizophrenic traits. And so on a regular basis, mom would call and say, Roy, he's refusing to take his medication. She said, I'm trying to find creative ways for him to get his medication. She shared, but it's just really difficult. And so she had called me early one morning, and she had shared, Roy, she said, he's in the restroom, and, he's arguing with himself. And she said, he's arguing with himself about killing us in our home. And so we were having a lot of these conversations. He was getting reevaluated with a psychiatrist, meeting with a psychologist, and it got to the point where mom was just like, I can't take this anymore. And she shared that, Roy, I'm going to move him to live with my grandmother. Grandma has a very large farm. Roy, he can roam the farm. I just can't do this anymore. I can't worry about him trying to kill my family, kill others. She said it's just very uncomfortable. And so it was, for me, it was hurting my heart, to have that this mother was in this place of turmoil of what to do with her. This is her oldest son, it's her first child, of just what to do, and so even with all the help and the support, mom could not find any peace, with this. Another concern, I had a boy, he was about 15, he was 16, and he was having some auditory hallucinations while I was driving a van full of about 6 or 7 other kids. And he shared that an individual of a certain name said that, Roy, for instance, Bob's on the bus with me today. And I said, well, who is Bob? And he said, well, Bob just a guy that talks to me in my head. He doesn't say anything bad. He talks to me. And so, so trying to make light of the situation, I just said, hey, can you tell Bob to leave the bus today? And, we'll talk about this later. So some of the other kids had heard him referencing this person that was speaking to him. So all the kids on the bus start saying, oh, we got a Jeffrey Dahmer on the bus, he's going to kill us all, and so I'm in a state of panic internally. It's how do I regain, how could I can, keep my composure while trying to calm down the rest of the boys, so I was able to do it that day. So picked them up again the next week, and the same story kind of plays out. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna call your mom afterwards. So I called mom and I said, hey mom, I really do have a concern. And I said, this is what's going on. And she said, oh my God. She said, hold on. And so she said, I had to leave the house. She said, because if my husband finds out that he is hallucinating again, he's going to break up with me. He's going to leave me. I'm going to have to leave with my kids. And he says he's not going to do this. She said, Roy, we cannot let my husband know that my son is hallucinating again. And so just mom is even dealing with some stigma herself regarding her son and her son getting the help that he needs. For my last story, it's again me driving the bus with kids. I dropped off all of them, but there's one that lived particularly far from the other youth. And so I was taking him home, and he had told me, I tried to kill my mom. And I just said, where did this come from? And he's like, well, it's just, I had these thoughts that, they were telling me to kill my mom, and I made all the plans, I planned it all out. Every time I went into the room, she wakes up. And then he says, then my sister was pregnant, I know he said, they said to kill my dad. These voices are telling me to kill him. He says, so, I get everything together, go into the room, and as soon as I lunge over him, he wakes up. I said, okay. I said, then, has his voice, what else has his voice said? And he said, they told me also to kill my sister, open up her belly and take her in to sacrifice her babies, her unborn. I said, okay. I said, so how did that work out? He said, Roy, I planned it out. I was extra quiet to make sure she didn't wake up. But as soon as I went in there, she woke up, and so I told him, I said, well, I'm concerned. I said, are you still having these thoughts? Have you discussed this with your mom? Have you talked about this with anyone else? And he shared that, I did. He said, I told my mom what's happening. My mom was like, I knew you were acting a little different. And so she said, I got reevaluated. My medicine's changed. I'm okay now. And so just even these stories are they just kind of really, it grips my heart, because these are kids, these are kids that are just like any other children. They run, they play, they have fun, they have futures, they want to do great things, but at the same time, they're trying their best to overcome these challenges that they're going through. And so for a moment, think about those three stories I shared. So these are three real examples from my professional history, just with families and youth that I've worked with. And we're just going to think about what if these three young people lived in a world where there were no stigma to mental illness? Oops, I'm sorry, let me catch up with my notes. And so what if there were no stigma, to mental illness? We could launch public health initiatives similar to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And so they help us with our infectious diseases. Also, we could launch things similar to like the American Heart Association, Environmental Protection Agency. We also can engage individuals in treatment sooner. And so, so the importance of having individuals engage in treatment sooner is before any adverse effects to the brain can happen, before individual lives are disrupted, and also to prevent potential harm to themselves or to other people. There's early identification. We could provide interventions at primary care schools, so elementary schools, schools, anywhere between, starting from elementary, going all the way through high school. Also in the colleges and universities. We could also establish comprehensive community-based care, such as medical management, individuals that may need help with of taking care of their mental health needs through the use of medicine. Maybe rehabilitative services or their residential facilities. So how can we help erase stigma? So everyone has a role to play in helping to erase stigma regarding mental illness. First ways that we can help erase stigma is by educating ourselves and educating others. Education can also include using correct terminology. When speaking about a mental health disorder, separate the person from their diagnosis. We don't call people bipolar. Instead, we say a person who has bipolar disorder. Mental health disorders are treatable. Since when we frame mental health disorders as treatable conditions, we can start to feel more helpful about seeking treatment. Mental health is a part of our overall health. Everyone understands they need to see a doctor, if they have an injury, if they have an illness. The same is true when we struggle with mental health issues. Talking about mental health is a part of our overall health, helps remove any shame or embarrassment. Also, we need to be conscious of our language. We can end mental health stigma by talking about mental health in the correct way. Recognizing we're all more alike than different, refraining from making stigmatizing comments, having ongoing conversations with family and friends, modeling love and acceptance. Um, Also, we could help erase stigma by showing compassion for those with mental illness. One dangerous thing about mental health stigma is it creates an us versus them situation. When a person realizes someone they know or admire struggles with a mental health disorder, it starts to knock down some of those lines and decreases shame. Showing solidarity with someone diagnosed with a mental health disorder is the next step in removing stigma. It takes us one step closer to demonstrating sympathy and showcasing empathy. Some other ways is we choose empowerment over shame. Let others know when they're being stigmatized. It could be if we're having a barbecue, or hanging out for 4th of July, or maybe Christmas time. All those big holidays are coming up in the fall, going into the winter. So let's say if you gather around the table or around the television, and you're hearing, if you're hearing others be stigmatizing, using words that may not be the best way to express, to express someone that may have a mental disorder. How do you gently guide them away from using stigmatizing words or comments or phrases that could hurt someone else? And then also, just don't harbor self stigma. So if you know that, hey, if I'm taking public perceptions and I'm internalizing them, and I'm choosing them as my own, just working to uproot that, to undo that. And also, it's important to share messages of recovery. So if there's someone that is struggling, and to regain control of their mental health. But for some way and somehow through treatment, through the use of professionals able to regain that control, it's great to share those stories. Hey, I know someone who was struggling with their mental health, but they're able to recover. Just like these young men, all 3 of these young men graduated from high school. All 3 of these young men that I shared from the past, they were able to, they they're honest about, hey, I got some things that are going on, and I know they're not about right, and so all 3 were able to, to meet with their health providers, their professional health providers, sharing these new signs and these new symptoms. They're able to get these things taken care of. And so we're on our last slide. So thank you all for your time today. And so I just want to know first, open the room if there are any questions about the presentation, any comments. I'm open to receive those.
Roy, I actually had a question for you. I was wondering if you've seen any other examples more recently in the media that do a better job of more accurately portraying what it's like to live with a mental illness.
I may not be the best one. So I have a toddler at home, so I'm watching a lot of Coco Melon all day. So I really don't get
Gotcha.
I don't get a lot of mainstream. I do watch a lot of podcasts, a lot of TED Talks, and so a lot of those are usually politically correct, and so, I think currently I haven't seen any, but to be honest with, so I think currently they handle these mental health topics a lot better than they did in the past, and so definitely for the newspaper clippings, it was really hard. I had to go back, 30, 40 years to find some things like that. But I'll say now, not often. I think we do a better. I think society does a little better on doing their best to to get away from the stigmatizing words and comments, even like some like the National Enquirer, some of those, like at the grocery store checkout, magazines right at the
Mhm.
conveyor belt. A lot of those are a lot better, and so I don't see it much in the newspapers. As far as television, I think television sometimes they poke fun, as some of the stigmatizing comments or phrases,
Mhm.
but just the media I consume the most is radio, and so I listen to a lot of
Mhm.
radio, a lot of podcasts, and I don't hear as much, and so I do hear a
Mhm.
lot of individuals sharing, hey, I have mental health, I have a mental health concern. It's great for
Mhm.
those to get out, and so but I think people are more open now and sharing
Mhm.
their mental health concerns and just really encouraging others, to jump out there and to get themselves just to make sure they're okay.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Another question that I had was, you clearly have a lot of experience with someone who has a mental health condition within an entire family system. What advice do you have for, a parent or a partner, someone else in the household, a caregiver who is seeing some things that may be concerning and indicate that a person is struggling with their mental health?
Yeah. And so I'll say one is always coming from a place of love, just letting them know that you're there for them. A lot of affirming words, just affirming them. Just ensure, making them feel comfortable and open. I think it's also important if you have any personal life experiences or if you know someone who's I guess those affirming messages are from my last slide. I'm gonna jump back to it. Just sharing those messages of recovery, and so if pulling from a personal example, just say, hey, I know someone else struggling in this way, or they're having some of the similar life experiences. This is how this person kind of dealt with it. This is how they overcame it. And sometimes you have to be sometimes you have to be blunt and just say, I'm worried, I'm concerned. And sometimes it may not be helpful to go by yourself, but is there someone else, that this person confides in and that they trust? How can you guys go together and have that conversation? And sometimes it doesn't always work the first time, and so
Mhm.
you can introduce it the first time, if they're open to it, then that's great. Then you can try to see, are they ready for next steps? And so or maybe give it
Mhm.
some time. Give it some time and you can revisit. We talked about this in the past. It's just I'm still concerned. I love you. I'm worried about you. I just want to make sure that you're okay. And then sometimes good can you go together? And so if they're not willing to go by themselves, how can you go together? And also with COVID in 2020, and so it really eliminated the purpose. I mean, the not the purpose, but it eliminated the process of us having to go to see a provider in person. So it's
Mhm.
virtual now. So it's easy as you pulling up your cell phone and you're speaking with a professional. Pulling out your laptop and talking to them. So even texting. And so you're texting. There's calling. There are so many ways now just for others to check in and make sure that everyone that make others to check in and make sure they're okay. And I think it's really
Mhm.
important just to use all of the ways that we can connect, to those professionals. There's also support groups. Maybe some aren't ready, to visit that professional. Is there a support group they can go to? And so there's
Mhm.
organizations like NAMI, that's out of WashU, so these are some support groups that you can go to. Um, or maybe even just encouraging a person to look up, just to look things. Well, maybe internet is always great to look up, but I think it's good just to find support groups. Is there someone they can confide in? Can you go together? How can you pretty much just show them, that it's from a place of love, not of judgment, and not of a shame. I think that's
Mhm.
always good to do.
That's really helpful. One other question I had kind of related to that is, so on the reverse side, if you are someone who lives with a mental illness and you want to have a conversation with your educator, your employer, or someone who lives in the household with you, what advice do you have from that perspective?
From that perspective, I would say one is this, do you feel like you can trust this individual? So it's someone that you live in a house with. One, is, as much as we don't want to be self-stigmatizing, you have to be, want to just make sure that whoever you're sharing this information with has your best interest at heart. you know, that won't turn around and use this against you or to exploit you in any kind of manner. You know, so I think the first step, a great step would be to speak to your doctor. Just, hey doctor, I'm not feeling well, you know, or, you know, I have these concerns, you know, talk to your doctor and just see where your doctor tells you to go from there. The next step could be even reaching out to, I think it's 211. I think that's right. It's through the, oh my gosh, it's leaving my mind. But one, talking to a doctor, finding someone you can confide in. I think it's 211. Call them, just share, hey, have these concerns. I'm concerned about this. Maybe even visiting a mental health urgent care. So they do also have those. I just learned of those. Mental health urgent care, you know, and so these are just spaces you can drop in that deals with manners of just behavioral health, mental health issues, you know, and just sharing these things. You know, I feel this way, you know, I need some help, you know, can you help me? Can you help me navigate this? You know, and so I really think the doctor is really the great place to go, or maybe even a pharmacist, you know, if you're at a pharmacy, you know, and just talk to someone and just say, you know what, I'm just not feeling myself, you know, and just see where those professional individuals will lead you to. But I'll say, one, find someone that you can confide in, someone that you can share this with, and to even see, and again, see, you know, I'm nervous to go in by myself. Would you go with me? You know, and so also I think there's 211, just sharing, you know, can you guys help me connect me with someone, you know, that I can talk to, that I can speak with. Your primary care physician is always good. Also, there's a clinic, you know, if there's a clinic that you can visit, you know, just drop in, you know, well, I'm not sorry, not drop in, but, you know, you set an appointment, you know, you can go visit and just share with them. I think the biggest thing is just, how can you connect to someone to share that, you know, and so it's to share that need rather than just sit and close yourself off and not speak to anyone.
That's really good advice. I appreciate that. I'll leave it open for another minute or two, let other people ask you some questions. I just monopolized. All right, Roy, well, thank you so much for this presentation. Such an important topic. Really, really appreciate having you here and sharing your expertise with us. And again, I just want to thank those who've joined for coming. If you're going to be watching this via YouTube, thank you so much for watching. This session is recorded, so you will be able to access that through RX Outreach's YouTube channel, and we'll also provide a link to that on our website. Finally, just a reminder, if you are struggling with affording the medications that you need for your mental health, RX Outreach can provide those at a reduced cost or for free. And if you'd like to learn more about that, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Mr. Roy Jefferson, or anyone at Express Scripts, anyone at RX Outreach. We can get you connected to the right person. And finally, again, rxoutreach.org, that has a list of those medications as well as just an easy, free enrollment process for you to do. So with that being said, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Roy?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry about the confusion with the recording. I'm not able to stop it on my end, even though I reclaimed